Hola todos, how we doing? It's Dano, Dr. Dano, and let me see if I can be helpful with some questions here. In our first article, we have strategy and the internet, which is over here. Ready? Has this pre-mass internet concern over information settled out now that internet and e-commerce is the way of the world? I'm going to agree with you on the first half of this question. I think we are significantly more comfortable with the internet and using it as a major e-commerce tool compared to the way we were when this article was written, and even 10 years after this article written in 2007. But I still think there's much to be worked out. When I say concern, I think comfort level. Yes, we're very much comfort. I still think most marketers don't understand my main nugget from this article and that trade-off between richness and reach. We haven't gotten there yet. Definitely the advertisers haven't really gotten there yet because they haven't given up on TV. This article was written 16 years ago. What parts of it were most prescient, foreshadowing, in your opinion? There might or may have overestimated the physical bookseller's ability to compete with Amazon, for example. True. We're still going to have some small niche book players. I don't know if Barnes & Noble is going to be able to survive operating the way they're operating now. They're going to have to morph into something else. Like, they're going to be a bookseller with a Panera type kind of location where the Panera would keep a revenue stream and the books would provide more margin. I keep thinking that we should mash up a Staples and a Barnes & Noble's. I think that would be a pretty good overlap. Or maybe like a toy store and a Barnes & Noble. I think we're going to need to see some sort of a hybrid format, or we're never going to see a bookstore with that kind of breadth and depth of selection unless there's something else. They tried DVDs and CDs as the mashup with the books. That wasn't enough. As the changing economics information, what is the redefined role of a leader? Ooh, that's a very interesting question. Let me think about that. Well, let's just say that we're going to foreshadow towards next week's articles, and maybe that's where this little question came from, because maybe we're reading ahead a little bit. I think leaders are going to have to change their metaphor. I think leaders are going to have to stop being top down and being more bottom up if they want to compete in the Web 2.0. Because the Web 2.0 is about collaboration. And most leaders are about barking orders. And you can't bark orders and expect collaboration. It doesn't work. Questions. What quantitative way can you measure richness and reach? This article was written in 1997. I know a lot of you guys are probably a little bent that this article was written in 1997. But I thought it was humorous. Maybe you guys didn't think it was humorous. And has there been considerable change since that time in many of the industries discussed? Has anyone created a way to measure it? Or maybe something along the lines of a technology S-curve? I'm not sure about a technology S-curve, but there is, without question, significant better measurement, both on richness and reach. Do a Google search for social media ROI. And as soon as you get social media ROI, you get the detail on both how rich the message is and how many people reach got it. This article was written pre-Google. Google Analytics alone. And let's do a small tangent because I like Google Analytics. So let's do a very small tangent. So this right here is my blog, and this is Google Analytics up here in the corner. And we have October 1st through October 31st. So this is 1 month of data. So in 1 month of data, it tells me that I had 1,340 visits, of which, this is the most important metric, 1,121 were unique visitors. Page views, page visits, about a minute per bounce rate. So I'm getting richness and reach. If I had more premium things, I could get more information on unique visitors. We have new visitors, 80-20. 80-20. Surprised about that percentage? I shouldn't think you should be surprised. We have a language breakout. We can do a country breakout. Surprise. US, Australia. I can't believe Australia. UK, Canada. Let's see. Operating system. We can see that 13% mobile here. Another 20 here. BlackBerry, Windows Phone, Linux. So it looks like by operating system, somewhere in the vicinity of 75 is sitting on a computer, 25 is da-da-da. Let's do one last thing. There is millions of little things that we can do here. Overview. So for the month, 33% of my page views, or 547 of the hit of that 1,000 da-da-da-da hits, were this post, one of the best valedictorian speeches ever, and I know one of us in class is giggling as soon as we see that. And guess what the second most popular one, 10%? Market orientation plus market driven versus market driving. Steve Jobs' book summary. Campbell Soups visits Seton Hall University. It's a nice amount. Lots of Apple, another market orientation, lots of Apple, a little bit of leadership, more Apple. And the last thing, while we're on this tangent, so this is total traffic since the blog was created. We're looking at about 24,000 unique page views. By the way, this is page views. This is not viewers because I'm in a different metric over here. But here we have Malcolm Gladwell. This one is 20% of all my page views. Market orientation is this is just like the main page, by the way. And the valedictorian one is there, then Apple, and then more leadership, then more Apple, then more market orientation, and more Apple. Apple and market orientation tends to be, surprise, surprise, a lot of what is popular on my blog. Now, to go back to our question, we have quantitative analytics. Pretty much every social media platform out there has an analytics package with it. LinkedIn has an analytics package with it. Twitter has an analytics package with it. And even if you don't want to use or Google has an analytics package, there's also ones that combine them all. This company here, Trax, is who the Super Bowl's using. Spectacular stuff. And even beyond Trax, we can talk about in the article, one of them talked about TweetDeck. TweetDeck is an awesome analytics type program that you can use within Twitter. It also helps you scheduling and stuff like that. Maybe this one's a little less analytics compared to, say, Trax. We have, to summarize this question, we have awesome measurement tools for richness and reach. I think the bigger problem is the tools are not well defined, and unless you know about Trax, how are you going to hear about Trax? Unless you know about Radiant 6, how are you going to know about Radiant 6? Hootsuite. Hootsuite's very popular. The authors certainly were able to predict a lot of what happened in business as reach and richness information has improved. Had they written any follow-ups recently that provide good predictor of what may come in the future? Surprisingly, many of the authors that we read throughout the semester, they actually change with the times. I don't know what happened to these guys. Maybe they were a one-hit wonder, but I've never seen anything from them again. I really haven't. Can a company still maintain a competitive advantage by withholding information from their customers? Or is it accessibility information that's making transparency a necessity to stay competitive? Now, please forgive me for saying this, but it depends. In a CRM world, there has to be significant transparency, at least between the customers and the firm. Now, is there information that the firm doesn't need to share with the customer because it doesn't provide any overall benefit in the CRM worldview? Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure the customer isn't overly concerned about geography and where stuff is coming from. This is more context specific. But yes and no. The article states that communication of information to a large audience has required compromises in bandwidth, customization, and interactivity. Doesn't the new use of social media marketing make this point moot? I don't think social media makes this point moot. I think the bandwidth and the speed that we have now, technology-wise, makes this point moot. You have to remember, in 1997, when we talk about the internet, I bet you it was 50 to 75% dial-up. At least 50% dial-up. We didn't have broadband penetration past 50%. I'm guessing, but it's going to be 2000, 2001, 2002, where we started seeing major broadband penetration, where pretty much every cable company was offering you internet as well. So that's what makes it moot, not necessarily social media. Has the trade-off between richness and reach been broken with the inclined use of online banking, as the articles says? The banking industry is still very much behind the curve. I'm happy that in the last 5 years they've been getting better with their online services. But the banking industry has really still have not used social to balance that trade-off between richness and reach the way they really could. It's disappointing, to be honest with you. Were businesses during this time skeptical of the age of online businesses, or were most businesses cognizant of it and started to prepare for the change? I would say at this time, and even through 2001, 2, 3, still the skepticism was extremely high. Extremely high. Still some skepticism now. Do market-oriented firms in the experience economy focus more on richness or on reach? Well, the smart ones do both because they have the tools for richness and reach. I'm going to argue that the experience of using Amazon is superior than the experience of purchasing on pretty much every other website on the internet. Name one that's better. You might be able to find one or two that are in the same class, and chances are they've hired Amazon to help them out because Amazon has a lot of consulting services to help out web brands fix themselves. So true market-oriented firms are ahead of the curve. And they understand the importance of experience. And they use social and digital, so there isn't a trade-off between richness and reach. New article, Strategy in the Internet. Got a lot of issues with this one. I apologize that this article was so old, but some of the comments that I want to say are going to come out in these questions, so... If newspapers were in danger of becoming obsolete in 1997, why would Warren Buffett invest in many newspaper companies, which he has? What does he see that we don't? Well, first of all, Warren Buffett, of the billions and billions of dollars that he has, there's no technology companies in his portfolio. That's not something, one of his mantras is, buy what you know. And technology is something that he doesn't know. I mean, even 15 years ago, It wasn't that he was not only just internet companies, other technology companies. He likes Staples. He likes Dairy Queen. He likes Coke. He likes McDonald's. He likes furniture companies. He likes insurance and financial industry stuff. Newspapers is something that he understands. Now, why is he doing it? I mean, we could speculate. There has been a reckoning in the newspaper industry. Now, the brand of the newspaper is worth something. Just like Jeff Bezos bought the Washington Post. It's worth something. You can't just create, even the Huffington Post right now, even though it's a huge, huge, huge brand, it doesn't have the cachet as the Washington Post. Jeff Bezos clearly had the resources to create a competitor to the Huffington Post. He preferred to have the Washington Post brand, not create another Huffington Post kind of thing. But the other thing, too, is that because so many of the other players are in the newspaper industry have decreased, there's actually been a little bit of a renaissance in paper in the last 2-3 years, because now there's less competitors out there. So some of the papers are actually doing a little bit better. I mean, the Boston Globe just got sold, the Washington Post just got sold, the Philadelphia newspapers got sold like 3 times in the last 2 years. So, I don't know. I still don't see it lasting. This must have been written right out of the dot-com bubble bursting. Did Porter see it coming? It was actually written before the dot-com bubble bursting. I mean, this has a March 2001 date on it. Given how long it is, and given Michael Porter, I bet you he started writing this in 99, 2000 at the peak of the bubble. And it took him probably another year or so to get it all through the editorial thing. And then it showed up in March 2001 with an issue that had other e-commerce articles in it. Did Porter see it coming? I don't think Porter really saw a bubble bursting. But you can tell by the tone of the article that he clearly saw a lot of things that were disturbing him. Particularly that everybody was ignoring fundamental strategy. And everybody was thinking that everything that existed prior to this bubble or this e-commerce thing was irrelevant. I think that creeped under his skin a little bit, and you can tell by the tone of the article and some of these call-out boxes that he wasn't too happy with that. Did he think that there was going to be a bubble bursting? I don't think so, because then he would have called it, and he didn't necessarily call it. Porter was right regarding the internet boom. Or at least Porter was trending in the right direction with regards to the internet boom. Internet 1.0. Many companies that offered a value proposition but did not extend their strategic thinking into the value chain didn't make it. Not many, almost all. Change this word from many to almost all. You can count on one hand how many companies that were in the 1.0 that still exist right now. Maybe two. What did companies such as Amazon and Priceline do well in order to make through and eventually survive as they are doing today? Believe it or not, this may sound like a complicated sentence, but I'm going to be able to summarize it very quickly. The firms that survived Web 1.0 did something that you fundamentally couldn't do without the internet and its technology. Like, eBay would be impossible without the internet. And if you think that Amazon is just a digital bookstore, then no. Amazon and MTurk, Amazon with using, just like we saw in one of the articles, retailing, that was not possible without the internet component. What we have in the Web 2.0, such as Priceline, Priceline was doing something fundamentally different than what was happening in the non-online world. That's why those firms survived. Pets.com folded because Pets.com was just a digital representation of something that already exists. They weren't doing anything differently. It was just digital. But eBay was different. Amazon was different. Yahoo was different. Priceline was different. That's why they survived. Why is it that many companies' top management don't seem to understand how their strategic plan and leverage the exchange of information in a way that gives them the competitive advantage? It's because they're not market oriented. That's why. It all comes back to MO. They don't see it because they don't have an external orientation. They're too busy dealing with the politics and the information about their own company. And because of that, they lose track of trends going around them, both consumer changing and competitor changing industry. You rarely hear people talk about creating a distinctive advantage when adopting technology. You always hear people speaking about the best practices. Is it that most managers and leaders are afraid to create something unique for fear of failing and wasting money? Well, there's no question that it's not necessarily fear of failing. There's some of that. But it's doing something that is unknown. I think getting out of their comfort level is a bigger deal than the fear of failing. Dealing with something that is completely unknown and foreign to the company is a bigger deal than the fear of failing and wasting money. Let me just check something real quick. Okay. Is it, I think that's the bigger deal. And even today, when we have a manager that has a smartphone in their hands and they're tweeting and all like that, they're still afraid to do something that's outside of their comfort zone. This comment here, even though it was a takeaway, I left it in there because I needed to address this. I feel this article was very outdated. Perhaps, but please understand this, class. Some of these articles have a message. Porter's article has a message. And the message is, don't ignore strategy. The 5 forces is still relevant today. Competitive advantage is still relevant today. The value chain is still relevant today. How you should think about this is, when you go into a company and everybody's talking about social, right? That's just a context. You need a strategy. And if the strategy is, okay, I need to improve my after-sales service, well, then you create a social means to accomplish that goal. If you have a problem and you want to fix lead generation, well, you use a social strategy to fix that. You don't just do social for the sake of social. That's silly. And that's the point that Porter is trying to make. The article, in that respect, is not outdated at all. In fact, I bet you there are hundreds and hundreds of firms in Silicon Valley right now that are completely ignoring this article, and they're going to get themselves in trouble relatively soon. Because they're doing their businesses without thinking strategically. The article says internet brands are difficult to build, and most .com brands don't have as much power as established brands. Is this still true? I don't know. I mean, we have so many of the most dominant brands that are both digital and non-digital. Apple. It's the number 1 brand in the world. If you do a Google search on, and I was just quoted in a newspaper article not too long about this in early September. The dominant brands, some of them are pure .com brands, and some of them are not. Well, we're in tangent mode, so interbrand survey. Best Global Brands 2013. So, come on, give me a list. God, this webpage is slow. The new top 100. There we go. So, let's see. Apple, Google. Google's number 2. That answers your question. Microsoft. Let's see. Who else? Samsung is a digital. Cisco is a digital. Oracle is a digital. Amazon's number 19. eBay's 28. Oh, what else do we have here? Consulting, auto. Facebook is 52, top riser. Let's see, what else do we have here? Nintendo, Prada, Sprite, Discovery, MTV, 3M, Johnson's. Oh, Adobe's a good one. Ferrari Gap. There you go. I think that answers the question. Once a company develops a strategy to differentiate, what can they do to prevent cannibalization of their strategy from their competitors? Wow. This is a fantastic question. Everybody, pay attention. Listen up. The only strategy that is sustainable, is your ability to stay ahead of your competitors and to change. Because whatever strategy you have now, your competitors will eventually benchmark and at least match you, or benchmark and surpass you. Which is why it is very difficult for anyone to stay number one for any given long amount of time. Your only competitive advantage is to continue to innovate. If you don't continue to innovate, you will get caught, you will get matched, and chances are you will get surpassed. Chances are. Only the firms that continue to move the bar and to stay ahead of the curve, that is their main competitive advantage. Otherwise, you will be caught. The internet has been seen as a win-win for industries now, right? Yeah. The smart companies. The article points out that the internet makes it hard for just one company to have total control over a market. But isn't this what we want? Anyone being able to break into the market? Well, yeah. In other words, let me rephrase this. We like low barriers of entry, and an app and the internet gives us relatively low barriers of entry. I mean, think about it. If you wanted to do things 20 or 30 years ago, you had to create a retail store infrastructure. Yeah, there were catalogs out there, but that was like small potatoes. You could... look at Instagram, for instance. These were 3 guys that coded for a month in an apartment, got an app into an app store. You know, their whole distribution and sales channel was the Apple App Store. Within 1 year, they had 100 million users. Tell me how that happens without the internet and electronic. It doesn't. It doesn't. All right. We have competed against free. We have a couple other articles here. What I'm going to do is I like to cut these off and split them up into 2 because otherwise it takes too long to upload these. So I'm going to stop and then do another one.